There are a handful of visual settings that can help elevate your gameplay, and they're not related to performance or graphics. A lot of you guys have been asking about my settings, so today I'm giving you my top 5 visual settings to help you improve in Vanguard and really any Call of Duty that offers these settings. You know what to do, so let's hop right in with the first setting, Field of View or FOV. If you don't know already, the field of view refers to essentially how much of the game you actually see in your view. Sort of like a camera lens can zoom in and out, your FOV determines how zoomed in you are. Now in terms of FOV, the higher the number, the wider, and the lower the number, the more narrow view you get. Now when it comes to me, I run the highest FOV, which is 120, and that's because I like to see as much of the map as possible and have a wider periphery. I find it very helpful when I'm looking over a specific area and I need to worry about enemies coming from multiple directions. The higher FOV also gives you the illusion that you're moving faster, and although your speed does stay the same, it does feel a lot better for me personally. That being said, going with a higher field of view also comes with some downsides. For one, because you're zoomed out in a sense, so is your vision, and for some people it might be difficult to see enemies at long distances. The second downside is that because everything shrinks in your view, so does your aim assist bubble. So not only are your targets getting smaller, so is the aim assist bubble around them. Finally, because you're requiring the game to render more of the map, you do lose out on some frames and tend to run at a lower frame rate. Now this all of course comes down to your personal playstyle. I'm an SMG player and I'm usually getting up close and personal with my opponents, so a higher FOV doesn't really bother me that much. Whereas AR players might want to go with a lower FOV in order to be able to utilize the range of their weapon. A good middle ground, however, is 109 or 110, which is what I actually ran in Cold War. And at that range, I found that you're able to get the best of both worlds. Now, the next setting actually falls under the field of view, and it can help negate some of the downsides of running a wider field of view, and that is your ADS field of view, which is fairly self-explanatory as it dictates your field of view when you're aimed down sights. You have two choices with your ADS field of view. The first is independent and the second is affected. With independent turned on, your aimed out field of view is independent from your ADS field of view, which means that no matter how wide your FOV is, when you're aimed down sights, it will always narrow to the same exact value. Now, independent does help in terms of visibility at longer distances, as well as the aim assist issue when you're aimed down sights, while also retaining the advantages of a higher FOV when you're running around on the map. That being said, as you can see, when you play with independent, you get a very strong zoom in effect, which can be very distracting and disorienting, especially when your FOV is on the higher side. Now, this doesn't work for me at all because I move around a lot and I move around fast, and this would just give me a migraine. So I use the other option, which is affected, and that essentially means that your ADS FOV zooms in relative to your regular FOV. As you can see, it's far less jarring. To further simplify the two options, independent means that your ADS zooms to the exact same value no matter what FOV you're running, and with affected, your ADS zooms in by the same percentage. Moving on to the third setting, we have the HUD Bounds. HUD Bounds refers to the placement of your dashboard on the edges of your screen. A higher number pushes your HUD to the edges and the lower number pulls it in closer to the center. I set both horizontal and vertical down to 0 in order to pull everything as close to the center of my screen as possible. I do this because I'm constantly looking at my minimap, the kill feed, and my equipment inventory, and by bringing them in closer, I don't need to look all the way to the very edge of my screen in order to utilize my HUD. If you find that sometimes you get killed while you're looking at your minimap, this minor change can help you more easily use your HUD while still being able to react to your immediate surroundings. Speaking of your minimap, let's move on to the fourth setting, which is your minimap shape. This is a very quick one, but you should always run a square minimap because as you can see, with a square map, your minimap encompasses a wider area of the overall map, as opposed to the default circle, which cuts off what would be the four corners of the square. And finally, moving on to the fifth setting, which is more like a group of settings, which I would call aesthetic effects. And the first aesthetic effect is your crosshair bobbing, which you want to turn off because all it does is add to your visual recoil, which can affect your aim. The next is camera shake, which you want to set to the lowest at 50%, which decreases your camera shake when explosions go off near you, allowing you to maintain as much visibility as possible. Next is your world and weapon motion blurs. Turn those off. Again, you want as much visibility as possible. And the final aesthetic effect is your depth of field, which you also want to turn off. With depth of field on, your surroundings, with the exception of where you're aiming, are blurred. And as I said before, you want to be able to react to your surroundings as quick as possible, and that involves being able to see your surroundings. But that about does it for today's video. If you have any further questions or suggestions for videos, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And as always, you know what to do. My name is Drew, this was Sablehound. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Hey, I want to be famous.